Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 85, Assignment. With such a great misfortune befalling the Shi clan, and with Shi Hongxian having no children to take over the mantle, the shops they owned in the various localities all temporarily suspended operations. The shopkeepers sent letters to Chu capital, ready to set up a morning hall in their old home and to discuss plans for the future. Sitting on the chair, Shen Zequan gave his instructions. This journey is a far one to make and you're also bringing along womenfolk. I don't feel reassured. Xiao, lead a few of our men to escort this elder brother Shi there. Shi Dan understood the meaning in Shen Zequan's words. He was afraid that to doubt him, so Shi Dan hurriedly kowtowed to show his gratitude. There's only the eldest mistress who can head the Shi clan now. Shen Zequan glanced at the account books before him and said, pay some attention when you go back. There's no rush to address other matters. Stabilize the current situation first. Don't lose your head. The deal we had discussed a few days back can be temporarily set aside as well. Once you obtain the keys, keep a low profile and check the money vault's entryways. A man's wealth is his own ruin by rousing greed in others. Now that you have to look after such an extensive business and also manage the money vault, you're bound to encounter some trouble. Shi Dan naturally understood that he could only count on Shen Zequan for protection now. He was a smart man who have followed Shi Hongxian for a while, knew best how to assess the situation. Going all out to work for Shen Zequan was precisely to prevent himself from being regarded as a sacrificial chess piece to be discarded by this man. With such guidance from master, this lowly one dare not be sloppy. I'll do my best to stabilize the business for master when I return to my hometown. Shi Hongxian trusted you that much, all because you have the capabilities to speak of. He was overbearing and domineering in the past, and was only willing to get you to work on the accounts, but it's different now. I'm giving you the chance to show your mettle. Shen Zequan set the account book aside without looking at him. Be honest in your work and play by the rules, and there will be plenty of chances for you to be in charge in the future. But if you deceive me, even by just one word, then I will claim this tongue of yours. He said it lightly and breezily, but Shi Dan felt chilled to the marrow upon hearing it. He hurriedly kowtowed again, not daring to look at Shen Zequan further. It was already noon by the time Shen Zequan dismissed Shi Dan and when Qiang returned. Qiang entered and removed his blade, and the errand runner at the side came over to serve him tea, which he downed in one gulp. No one's there. Qiang pulled out a chair and sat down. He said, all the Shi clan's residences in Chu capital have been thoroughly searched. There's no sign of teacher and Shifu whatsoever. Shen Zequan said nothing as he leaned against the chair in silence with a displeased expression. Could they be in a manor outside the city? Qiang wiped his sweat. The Shi clan has many manors out there, too. Who knows, he might really have hidden them outside. Shifu isn't teacher. It has been so long. He would surely think of a way to come back and see me. But he didn't. Shen Zequan's heart sank. This shows that he's trapped somewhere and can't come back. Ji Gang was not Chi Huilian, who was too weak to trust even a chicken. There was almost no one who was his match in Chu capital. Perhaps there was a highly skilled expert among the men from the martial fraternity whom Shi Hongxian had hired with a large sum of money. But now that Shi Hongxian was dead, this group of martial artists should have already scattered and fled, busily dodging the pursuit of the imperial court. So, why would they care about a couple of prisoners? Call Fei Sheng over. Shen Zequan said, I have a mission for him. Qiang was momentarily stunned, after which he said, these people. Will he be willing to take it on? Since he is registered to serve in the imperial prison, Shen Zequan raised his eyes and his gaze cold as he spoke, then there is no unwilling for him to speak of. If these people cannot be useful to me, then leaving them around will only lead to disastrous consequences in the future. The Jin Yue had no lack of talents, but those like Gu Jin, who could scout everywhere and anywhere with just his pair of eyes and ears, were few and far between. This Fei Sheng was a son of illegitimate birth born of a concubine. He was an assistant commander, one who inherited his father's original post in recognition of his meritorious services. This person was the most outstanding in conducting searches, but he was previously one-upped and overshadowed by Qiao Tianya. He hung on until it was finally the 8th year in which he could be considered for promotion, and made many trips to the Marquis of Helian's place, whose family he was a member of. He initially thought himself to be the one to assume the position of northern judge. Who would expect that a Shenzequan would appear out of nowhere? The latter completely severed his future prospects, keeping him stagnant in his original post to await orders. Fei Sheng was different from Qiang. He knew more about how to navigate the official circles than Qiang, who came from an impoverished family background. He could even strike up a conversation with Han Cheng, who was his superior, and he could even be considered half a disciple of Han Cheng. So, he was not like Qiang and the likes, who had a former friendship with Ji Gang. He totally did not give a damn about Ji Gang. At present, he was someone highly regarded in the Jinyue, one on mutually antagonistic terms with Shenzequan. When Shenzequan was at the height of his glory a few months earlier, he had lain low and did not face Shenzequan head-on. But friction had been gradually building up in recent days. Shenzequan had wasted too much time examining old cases, and half of that time was wasted because of these people. They heeded only half of the instructions he handed down to them, and they were sloppy in their search and gathering of the case files. On his end, Shenzequan had been unable to match the records to the reign and had to personally make a trip to the Ministry of Justice before he could put it all in order. The atmosphere between both sides was already beginning to get explosively belligerent. Qiang knew they were capable, but he still choked with resentment when he got compared to them in such a manner. Yet, he also understood he was inferior to them. Finding the men was now the top priority, so he did not object and rose to go call Fei Sheng. Qiang lifted the curtain and walked out to see Fei Sheng in another room drinking wine and playing the finger-guessing game with others. He stood beside the door and said, "Assistant Commander Fei, please make your way to the central room. His Excellency is calling for you." It was as if Fei Sheng did not hear him as he stepped on the chair and shouted as he played with the others. For the entire room of people to be creating such a ruckus in broad daylight was truly a display of impropriety and disrespect. Qiang had never flared up or lost his temper at the others. He had been tagging along on missions with his father ever since he was young, and he had seen all sorts of people. He knew how to take care of others, and he had a sense of propriety. He could make the acquaintances of even the squad commanders standing guard and errand runners below him in rank. No matter how uncomfortable he was at present, he would never at this time pull a long face and show his displeasure at the other party. As such, he strode through the door and grabbed the wine jar on the table to personally pour a cup for Fei Sheng. He said courteously, "It's nothing major, and it's not a mission on His Majesty's order either. It won't take up that much time." Tossing the peanuts, Fei Sheng said, "If it's not His Majesty's order, then just get one of the subordinates to go. What does it say of him to be singling out someone like me with rank and authority? That doesn't make sense, does it? His Excellency naturally has his own arrangements. Whether you take it up or not can be negotiated." Qiang poured a cup for himself and offered a toast to him. It has been hard on the various comrades to be checking the old cases these past few days. Assistant Commander Fei has worked hard and achieved much. Here's a toast to you. Men of capabilities are always overworked. Please go. Fei Sheng did not care to work for Shenzequan. He also boasted of being Shenzequan's senior, so Shenzequan was not qualified enough to order him around. But when all was said and done, they had to work together. He had no reason to create a scene without good cause. It would not sound good either if news of it were to make its way to Han Cheng. Fei Sheng drank this cup of wine and smiled insincerely at Qiang. Without even answering him, he took his own authority token from the table and turned around to leave. Left behind and given the cold shoulder, Qiang set down the wine cup and cupped his hands to the surrounding Jinyue, each of whom were wearing various expressions on their faces, and left too. The moment he retreated out, his own men also stood up. Qiang wiped his mouth and said, "Why are you all standing up? There's no need for formalities between us brothers. Sit." Xiao Wu, who was of similar age to Ding Tao, could not refrain from wearing his heart on his sleeve. He said in anger and resentment, "Look at his eyes growing on top of his head. He walks like a tyrant, all so overbearing and puffed up with his own importance that he has no fear that karma might hit him hard in the face someday. What kind of an honorable man is he that he acts all like a snob? Bah! Chingur, why do we even put up with him? Remove his token and drag him out, then cover him with a sack and bash him up. See if he still doesn't learn to behave himself." Qiang rebuked, "What insolent remarks are you spouting? If news that we beat up our own people gets out, we will be making a mockery of ourselves." He looked at every one of them and continued, "We are all attending to official duties together. We mustn't leave any misunderstandings or unhappiness festering. Otherwise, how can we all look out for each other when we are on a mission? Since they look down on us, then we'll work harder to prove ourselves." Fei Sheng lifted the curtain to enter and sloppily paid his respects before the table. He still reeked of wine, the smell strong enough for Shen Zequan to catch a whiff of it from where he was across the table. Without lifting his head, Shen Zequan said, "Drinking on duty is punishable by a deduction from your salary, yes?" Seeing that Shen Zequan did not get up, Fei Sheng pulled the chair over. But before his ass could touch the chair, Shen Zequan looked at him. Shen Zequan unhurriedly let out a smile. "Sit." Fei Sheng could not tell what he was up to. He sat down and asked, "I was told you were looking for me. What can I do for your excellency?" Shen Zequan replied, "There's an assignment that no one else can do except you." Seeing as he had something to ask of him, Fei Sheng could not help but relax. He touched the pipe in his sleeve pocket and started to put on airs, first saying, "Is it a prison assignment? If it's an order from the commander-in-chief, then pass me the official paperwork and I'll be able to work on it." Shen Zequan tapped away the excess ink on the brush tip and said, "It's not a prison assignment, and it's not an order from the commander-in-chief." Fei Sheng struck the flint and bit down on his pipe as he laughed and said, "Then it's your excellency's order? I can do it, but I still have a mission to keep track and record as of late. Isn't this just in time for the 4th month? I have to keep an eye on the price fluctuations of the Chu capital's daily necessities of firewood, rice, oil, and salt." The so-called keep track and record job was to have the Jinyue record all minor and major matters in a book, including the prices of grains, rice, noodles, and tea. These were to be reported to Liege Unhung and Lianji whenever necessary. But this assignment did not have to be personally carried out by Fei Sheng himself. He was a 4th-rank assistant commander, and the only assignments in which he could be dispatched out were for arrests and field work. By putting it this way, he was, in truth, not planning to take on the assignment. Why use an ox cleaver to kill a chicken? Having you do that is simply a waste of talent. Shen Zequan said. "I am a person of mediocre ability to begin with. I cannot be compared to such a naturally talented hero like your excellency. You are already a 3rd-rank vice commander at such a young age, and His Majesty looks upon you favorably. What's more, you are a man of elegance and poise." Fei Sheng blew out puffs of smoke. "Men like us can only do some lowly work to muddle our way through. We don't dare to dream of anything else, and we don't dare to be one either. Wait for a few days. I'll have free time only after a few days." Shen Zequan said, "This assignment cannot wait." Fei Sheng moistened his dry throat and half leaned over to look at Shen Zequan to say, "Then what can I do? Each matter has its own priorities. I have to finish the task at hand before I can take on another assignment. This is the rule set by Ji Wufen back then, and I can't break it. So, you'll have to wait. Shenzequan, having received that smoke right in his face, looked at how fearless his expression was and knocked the ashes away to the edge of the table. Capitalizing on his status and thinking that Shenzequan could not keep him under control, Fei Sheng slid the chair away and prepared to bid him farewell. Shenzequan suddenly extended his fingers to tack a slip of paper before Fei Sheng and said, I can wait, but can the assistant commander wait? This year is your promotion year. But coincidentally, the provincial administration commissioner of Juexi, Zhang Qingshan, is about to enter the capital to report for work. Surely you understand the Grand Secretariat's intent by having Zhang Qingshan enter the capital at this point in time. He will be going to Zongbo to be the person in charge there, and this person lacks an inspector general from the Jinyi Way by his side. So, is Assistant Commander Fei still busy? Zhang Qingshan was a provincial governor who was outstanding in his governance of the area within his jurisdiction, having forged ahead and turned Juexi into the Great Zhou's granary. Liege's and Qidong's army provisions all came from him. This person was someone whom even Xiao Jiming and Qi Zuyin could not afford to offend. Working for him meant that there would be nothing to worry about one's future prospects. Fei Sheng could not advance any further in ranks. He had to find external help. But because he was an illegitimate son born of a concubine, he was not able to move in the same circles as all the bona fide direct descendants born of the principal wives like Han Jian, Fei Shi, and Pan Lin. Without that layer of connection, he could not make his way up through the ranks. Being stuck in this position made him feel depressed all over. Otherwise, he would not have greeted Shenzequan with such biting sarcasm and mockery. Fei Sheng hurriedly extinguished the pipe and rubbed his palms at the sides of his legs. He bent over slightly and said to Shenzequan with a smile, "Look at me, not knowing what's good for me. What assignment? Tell me." Shenzequan said, "I want you to turn over the entire Chu capital to search for 2 men. Search openly, or..." Fei Sheng looked at Shenzequan and gradually cottoned on. He said, "That's easily done. I'm good at this. Give me their descriptions, Your Excellency. 5 days. I'll definitely find them for you." Shenzequan lowered his voice and said, "I'm only giving you 2 days." Fei Sheng looked at the slip of paper, clenched his teeth, and accepted. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 86, Former Residence. Hua Xianji and Qi Xiu's wedding was scheduled to take place on the eve of the grain in ear in the 4th month. The Ministry of Rites had already submitted the drawn-up process to the Empress Dowager. The internal affairs of the palace were numerous and complex, so when it came to such a major affair, the key government offices could not afford to be lacking in personnel. Fu Man originally thought himself to be the perfect candidate for the position of the Directorate of Ceremonial Seal Holding Director. He had the qualification and experience, having attended the eunuch school and having been in charge of managing the affairs in the Grand Secretariat and Mingli Hall. Moreover, he had Xiao Qiye to vouch for him. As such, he was even more discreet and cautious as he attended to his official duties these days. Unexpectedly, when the imperial edict was issued, the appointed seal-holding director turned out to be Feng Quan and not him. Feng Quan was young, and he had little experience to speak of. He had never studied in the eunuch school. What's more, he was a junior eunuch who was already over the usual age when he entered the palace. His connection to the former Pan Rugui and Jilei was one that could never be severed clean. To let him take on this post that was comparable to that of an inner minister, Fu Man really did not know if he should cry or sigh. The promotion of an outer court official depends on his family's social standing, place of origin, and teacher or master he tutored under. I thought the promotion of us inner court eunuchs would be exempted from this hurdle of family background and status. But, damn. Fu Man set down the teacup and let loose a long sigh. Who knew that we still can't cross this hurdle after all? What family background does he have? Xiao Qiye listened to Fu Man as he vented his frustrations and said as he leisurely drank his tea, he's only benefiting off his elder sister's glory. Your lordship, why is it that I don't have a sister? Fu Man slapped his knee and lamented. Xiao Qiye snorted a laugh and said, if the seal isn't available, there's still the brush. The brush holding director also manages the Eastern Depot. Lao Fu, by letting him take the lead at the head of the pack, you'll get to escape the spittle of imperial censors. His Majesty's current treatment of me can't be compared to the former emperor's treatment of Pan Rugui, and the Eastern Depot isn't as influential as the Jinyi Wei. Fu Man hesitated and then said, Your lordship, looking at how favored her ladyship Mu is at present, if she were to give birth to an imperial heir in the future, then wouldn't Feng Quan secure this position completely? Never mind if he is one who knows his place. I fear that he harbors an ulterior motive and ends up breaking the imperial court's laws and throwing the state into chaos. Wouldn't that make him the second Pan Rugui? Fu Man had to greet Feng Quan with a smiling face in the palace, but in truth, he was jealous and sickened of him. Feng Quan had Muru as a backer. If Fu Man, who had been supplanted by him, wanted to stand up to him as an equal in the Directorate of Ceremonial, he had to win over the outer court officials. He is young, and he still has to rely on you for many matters. You often move around the Grand Secretariat, and you are a known figure to the Grand Secretary. If one were really to compare, he is merely a lad who usurps what was supposed to be for others. He is no one worthy of mention. Xiao Qiye comforted him in this manner, then continued, with us looking out after each other from within and outside, we needn't fear him. How is it going in the palace lately? Second young master, she is dead. His Majesty still thinks of the tune he had yet to complete and felt sad for a few days. Fu Man turned sideways to look at Xiao Qiye. But your lordship, while I was serving tea to the various excellencies in the Grand Secretariat, I inferred from Minister Wei's words that he still wants to investigate the Shi clan's accounts. The Shi clan caused such a big commotion at the harbor, and there is no head of household this time. Such a big business may be likened to a piece of fatty meat, it's a gold mine. They are all eyeing it. Isn't his family still alive? Xiao Qiye and Shen Zequan had discussed the follow-up plans for the Shi clan. Those keys had fallen into Shen Zequan's hands, and in Xiao Qiye's eyes, these were Shen Zequan's dowry. Biding his time, he said, Shi Hongxuan's eldest sister-in-law, and Shi Hongxuan's various cousins are all skilled in managing the business, and they have not committed any crimes. By investigating their accounts for no apparent reason, Minister Wei would be accused of hitting a man when he's down. His Majesty didn't agree, but the Grand Secretary seems, Fu Man moved his arm onto the table and said to Xiao Qiye, seems to have the intent to pursue the accounts, too. Hai Lianji naturally has his own considerations. The Shi clan had too much silver hidden away. Rather than let the remaining few clans divide it up among themselves, they might as well take that money into the state treasury and let the imperial court manage it. But this meant that Hai Lianji had to fight with the noble clans head-on. The key is still His Majesty. Xiao Qiye thought for a moment and said to Fu Man, His Majesty is a wise ruler, and he's the most particular about benevolence and righteousness. It was only just last month that he granted a general amnesty. Wouldn't raiding and confiscating the Shi clan's properties and possessions for no rhyme or reasons this month run contrary to the original intent of the amnesty? His Majesty is also hesitating himself. Lao Fu, Feng Quan will no doubt go along with Minister Wei for this matter. If you go along too, then it will instead look like you're blindly going along with the flow. Why not use the opportunity while you are serving His Majesty to tell His Majesty in detail that it is inadvisable to go ahead with this matter at present? The gears turned in Fu Man's head as he replied, won't this offend Minister Wei? Whether inside or outside the palace, there is only one master, and that is His Majesty. Xiao Qiye smiled. Pan Rugui was powerful and influential too, but he did not throw in his lot with the emperor. I'm not at all surprised that he ended up executed. Besides, how can Ming Li Hall tolerate tongues wagging? How would Wei Guo know of the words you say to His Majesty? His Majesty likes people who are sentimental. You don't have to persuade for the sake of persuasion. Just mention it in passing. I shall listen to your lordship's advice. Fu Man was all smiles, looking warm and affable. In any case, this money won't land in our pockets. We all might as well not want it. The Ministry of Revenue has been accounting the Imperial Army's accounts for the medicinal herbs used at the Temple of Penitence for quite a number of days. How's it? Have you heard anything of it? It's been done and has already been submitted to His Majesty's desk. Nothing is wrong. Fu Man knew that Liang Qiushan, from the Ministry of Revenue who was entrusted to handle this account, had been nominated by Xiao Qi, so he said, His Excellency Liang is truly something to be able to sort out and keep the accounts in such clear order. He could even answer readily and smoothly when the Grand Secretary interrogated him about it. Looks like he's on his way to a promotion, too. Thus, Xiao Qi asked no further. When Fu Man was leaving, Chen Yang gave him the new tea from He province that they had prepared in advance. Fu Man's hand sank when he received it, and so he knew that there was something inside. He pretended to decline it, and it was only after Chen Yang repeatedly persuaded him that he finally accepted. The next day, when the court was dismissed, Xiao Qi waited outside Ming Li Hall for himself to be summoned. Shen Zequan was there, too. Both men stood at an appropriate distance away, neither too far nor too close. There are people everywhere probing into the Shi clan's properties these few days. Xiao Qi removed his Longli blade and handed it to Shen Zequan, taking the opportunity when Shen Zequan received it to hold down his hand slightly. Your Excellency ought to move fast soon. Shen Zequan seemed to have something else on his mind. Upon hearing him, he lifted his Longli blade and said, Yes, he has already left the Chu capital and is rushing back with the coffin in tow. There should be news next month. Hai Lianji is not the same as the others. He has made up his mind to take the Shi clan's family properties into the state treasury. No matter how fast your man rushes, he will still lose the advantage of the first strike. Xiao Qi found that Shen Zequan was a little distracted and thus, he released his grip. Shen Zequan's palm sank, barely able to hold up Longli blade as he said. No matter how fast he is, he still has to play by the rules and follow procedures. Xiao Qi cast a glance at Ming Li Hall's corridor and asked, What's wrong? Shen Zequan replied, I'm looking for someone. Shi Fu is missing. Xiao Qi said, as long as there is no passage document issued, he is still in Chu capital. The 8 great training divisions would not dare to let people in and out without authorization during the epidemic. And the Imperial Army took over the patrol after the epidemic. If Jigang Shifu has already left, I should have news on my end. I'm also guessing that he's still in Chu capital. Shen Zequan paused for a moment. Shi Hongxian only did what he did to take teacher away. Shifu went along for the sake of protecting teacher. He shouldn't have been held up for this long. But if teacher is still in danger, then Shifu definitely won't be able to leave on his own. Shi Hongxian is already dead. Xiao Qi turned his eyes slightly to look at the other end. Time to get someone to check that gentleman's house. Shen Zequan followed Xiao Qi's gaze. On the end of that gaze was Xue Zaiozhuo. Dressed in official robes, he was approaching them together with Zhang Qingshan. Xue Zaiozhuo was plain in appearance but he had a scholarly and refined bearing. He was not the same type as Kong Qiu, Sen Yu, and the likes. He was gentle towards the others, making it likely for the others to form a favorable impression of him. On the contrary, Zhang Qingshan was not what one would expect. The formidable leader of Juexi from the rumors actually looked younger than his actual age. Both of them drew close and the 4 men greeted each other. In the past, when Zhang Qingshan came to Chu capital to report on his work, he had only seen Xiao Qiye from afar at the banquet of 100 officials. As for Shen Zequin, it was his first time meeting him. But his heart was not in this, so he was neither warm-hearted nor pretentious towards them. Many old cases were closed this year, and it's all thanks to the contributions of Assistant Minister Xue and the various excellencies from the Ministry of Justice. His Majesty will surely lavish you with praises today when we meet with him. Xiao Qi said to Xue Xiaozuo with a smile. Xue Xiaozuo smiled too, shaking his head slightly as he said, "It's all due to His Excellency the Minister's perceptive and wise judgments that the cases could be closed. I merely assisted him from the side. How is it considered my contribution? On the contrary, it's Vice Commander Shen who straightened out and put those disorganized case files into order again. It has indeed been hard on him." Shen Zequin looked at Xue Xiaozuo and said, "The Imperial Prison has an archive I can check. These matters are something that even a common clerk would be able to handle." Xue Xiaozuo's expression betrayed nothing. Other than Zhang Qingshan, the other three were all feigning civility. Zhang Qingshan seemed as though he did not want to get involved. He merely stood at the side and said nothing. Fu Man lifted the curtain and came out to call out their names. Only then did the four men move together into Mingli Hall. As Shen Zequin strode in, he instantly caught sight of Feng Quan, who was serving at the side beneath Li Jianheng's dragon throne. Both men's eyes met, and Feng Quan smiled. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Fei Sheng prided himself on being the best one when it came to conducting searches. There had never been a person that he could not find. Yet, there was still no trace of Ji Gang and Qi Huilian even after he had gone through the entire Chu capital these 2 days. Ji Qingqing had followed him all the way. When he saw that Fei Sheng had now lost his arrogance and had been silent all this while, he asked, "Is there a possibility that they had been taken out of the city?" Fei Sheng was serious when he was attending to official duties. Not looking at anyone, he squatted at the bottom side of the Shi clan's burned veranda and said, "Very unlikely. Since one of them had extraordinary skills, then it is only by taking them down on the spot that would ensure no traces will be left behind. For this kind of matter, the more the commotion, the easier it is to be exposed." Ji Qingqing took a few steps back and surveyed this mansion with spacious halls and extensive gardens. He said, "But if he had hidden them at home, then how could it have escaped the searches of our brothers? We have long done a thorough search of this residence. Although I have never befriended or associated with Shi Hongxian, I have heard of his temperament." Fei Sheng rose. He was suspicious by nature. So, the more important the things were to him, the more he would have kept them close to him. Because he did not trust others. Since these two men are so important, he would definitely not put them in a place far away from him. Fei Sheng's voice gradually trailed off. He climbed up along the scorched wall and pushed aside the various branches to look over next door. "That's Prince Jin's manor." Ji Qingqing climbed up after him and crouched down to look inside. Deserted for many years, Fei Sheng jumped down and took a few steps into the painted corridor, where he saw the paint at the top had already peeled off. It was all gray and drab all around, covered thickly with cobwebs. He used his Xiaochun blade to pick off the cobwebs and tried pushing the doors with paper seals. That's right. It has indeed fallen into disuse for many years. Ji Qingqing looked around. You suspected he hid them here. As soon Fei Sheng touched the door, he knew something was wrong. He said, "It's a decades-old manor yet the seals are merely covered in dust. Something is suspicious here." He took half a step back and abruptly kicked the door open. End chapter. Note. Grain in ear, the time of the year before the harvesting season. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 1, I Was an Outcast Liege. Chapter 87, Imperial Air. The door panel fell to the ground with a loud thud, strewing accumulated dust all over. Fei Sheng covered his nose and mouth and strode in to check all the corners, not missing a single one. This was the former residence of Prince Qin. Although it had fallen into a state of disrepair for years, one could still get a glimpse of its former opulence and grandeur. Fei Sheng lit the candle he carried on him, extinguished the lighter, and headed into the inner chamber. The bed curtain and beddings are all new. Qiang lifted the drape and looked at the bed. There were still people staying here a few days ago. Fei Sheng stopped beside the table and pushed aside the teapot cover to reveal the residual tea stains within. They drank spring tea from the Bama province prefecture of Jiuqing. Looks like Shi Hongxian did not treat them shabbily. Qiang saw the blood stains when he inspected the bed, and his heart began to pound. He lifted the entire quilt, then took a sudden step back. Hidden under the quilt on the bed was a putrid-smelling corpse with obvious signs of livor mortis. This person had obviously been dead for a few days. Fei Sheng held up the light to inspect the corpse. This person was strangled to death. Fei Sheng pointed to the corpse's throat. It was crushed outright. There are blood stains. Qiang said. He had wounds inflicted with a blade before he died. Not only that. Look at his neck. There are 2 sets of strangulation marks, which means that the first time did not kill him. How could those men Shi Hongxian hired from the martial fraternity alone be capable of forcing Shifu into such a corner? As Fei Sheng spoke, he used his blade to prop up the corpse and slowly turned the body over. There's no anomaly with the livor mortis, so he shouldn't have been poisoned. The gashes on his back are in such a mess. The attacker was obviously a novice who knows nothing of swordsmanship and had haphazardly hacked away at him. The blade missed the vital points, that's why he chose to choke him to death. They should have joined forces to kill this man. I suspect the Shifu was injured. It's likely he was too physically weak, and that teacher had no choice but to take up the blade himself as a last resort. The more Qiang heard, the more alarmed he got. He said, since the corpse could be laid out in such a neat and orderly manner, does it mean that teacher and Shifu have not reached the point of panic yet? As long as it's possible that the corpse was laid out by others. Fei Sheng surveyed the place again. There are no traces of a fight here either. I think Shifu was injured and did not have the means to display his prowess with ease, that's why he needs teacher's help. But their second transfer was definitely not arranged by Shi Hongxian, because none of those martial artists he hired from the martial fraternity would dare to set themselves against the Jinyi Wei for just a bit of money. Whether or not this corpse is one of the martial artists remains to be seen. If it isn't. Fei Sheng's words came to an abrupt halt. He was willing to work for Shenzhequan because he was eyeing the lucrative post. If this matter was not a personal grudge, then it was going to involve court strife. He did not want to put himself right in the middle of it, so he did not finish the second half of his words. If it wasn't a martial artist, then this kind of highly skilled expert that could only come from the imperial palace, and this corpse was possibly killed the Jinyi Wei themselves. Qiang understood his concerns. Both men fell into a silent stalemate. This house was creepy and eerie, so continuing to stand here like this was not an option. Fei Sheng retracted his blade and said, they are most certainly in Chu capital. Each of the officials' residences and princes' manors has specialized bodyguards to stand guard. Their doors are tightly shut and there are secret passages built inside. It's simply too easy if they want to hide a few people. Sorry, this humble one is unlearned and of little talent. I can only search this far for His Excellency Shen. With that, he cupped his hands to Qiang and stepped out the way he came in. He mounted his horse and headed back to turn in his report. From where he was in his spot, Qiang saw a trail of blood that dragged all the way to the ground. So, he followed the blood trail and kneeled while propping himself up on the ground to look under the bed. It was even darker beneath the bed, and there seemed to be something there. Qiang reached out to fish it out, but it turned out to be a handful of ashes. Qiang blew away the ashes, leaving only a fingernail-sized piece of paper in his palm. It was the remnants of handwritten notes that Qi Huilian had not thoroughly burned away. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Shenzequan closed his eyes. Kept between his fingers was the piece of paper that had been burned yellow. There were only a few words remaining on it, yet these were words he was the most intimately acquainted with. Qi Huilian's handwritten notes touched upon quite a number of matters. They were all treatises on contemporary politics they discussed back then in the Temple of Penitence. Every little thing he had taught Shenzequan, and every inside story about the eunuchs he knew when he served as Grand Mentor, were all in the notes. During the epidemic, Qiao Tianya had transferred them all to a store in the loft for Qi Huilian to personally keep them safe. To prevent the information in them from leaking out, Qi Huilian had his own way of reading them. What treatise it was and how to read it were all something he had devised himself during his spare time at the temple. If one were to read them in the usual order, quite the number of matters would appear to be just a jumble of words, much like the ravings of a lunatic, totally incoherent and incomprehensible. But he burned it? Was it because he was forced by circumstances, or because he was worried that the one detaining him would be able to read it? Qiao Tianya, who had been leaning against the wall, involuntarily straightened up when he saw Shenzequan stepping out. Shenzequan swiftly walked down the steps and said, "Prepare the carriage." Noting that it was already getting late, Qiao Tianya knew where he wanted to go. The inconspicuous and common horse carriage set off and circled twice on Jinwu Street before reaching the Plum Blossom residence. "Where is his lordship?" Shenzequan got off the carriage and asked. On seeing his solemn expression, Ding Tao did not dare to play around and replied honestly, "His lordship has just gone out to invite that eldest master Xue for a drink. He will return later." "Your Excellency, do you need me to go and call his lordship back?" "It's just a few streets away." For Xiao Qiye to invite Xue Zaiyi for a drink at this moment, he must also be trying to probe deeper into Xue Zaiyi's woe. The Xue residence was not an easy one to investigate. It was far more convenient to have an insider like Xue Zaiyi around than to send someone to grope around in the dark for clues. Shenzequan walked into the courtyard and said, "You just need to tell him that I'll be resting here tonight. Tell him to come back after he's done drinking. Don't stay out all night, but also tell him there's no hurry. There's no need for him to rush back immediately. Xue Zaiyi is not an easy one to dismiss at will." Ding Tao uttered an acknowledgement and left. Qiao Tianya followed Shenzequan and asked, "Why the sudden hurry?" Shi Hongxian didn't trust anyone, but he trusted Xue Zaiyi's woe. Shenzequan headed up the stairs under the dim light from the lantern. That last time Shi Dan defrauded him, he chose to suspect Shi Dan rather than to suspect Xue Zaiyi's woe. He always had to ask about everything. Having gotten hold of teacher this time, he no doubt wouldn't dare to act on his own. Before his death, Shi Hongxian was so sure that Shenzequan would lose. Why? He must have known something that Shenzequan still did not know as yet. Shi Hongxuan's promotion to the Bureau of Evaluations was on Xue Zaiyi's suggestion. He heeded Xue Zaiyi's advice that much. Why would he? Shenzequan suddenly paused in his steps and stood where he was. The Xue clan had already been on the decline for a long time. Shi Hongxian would never comply and put himself at the disposal of a down-and-out person. He would also never be that easily won over by anyone. They came to associate with each other due to them being fellow students at the same class. Because both clans were related by marriage in the previous generations, they had ties of kinship and friendship between them. But, what did Xue Zaiyi's use to maintain his hold over Shi Hongxian? Shi Hongxian put profit before anything else. He could even kill his dear blood brother on a whim. It was impossible for Xue Zaiyi's to gain his trust of such proportion with just that flimsy bit of blood relationship alone. Shenzequan started to grow apprehensive for no reason. He looked at the eaves. The shadow was like a threatening beast, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It had already bitten half of his body between its sharp fangs. Clues that he could not pry apart clearly were just like the dense clusters of water weeds that, along with the colors of the night, entangled and tied down his hands and legs, giving him an inkling of the danger. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When Xiao Qiye saw Ding Tao come in midway through his drinking session with Shui Ziyi that he had invited the latter to, he knew that Shen Zequan had returned to the residence. As he socialized with the other man, he gave Ding Tao a slight nod to indicate that he already understood. Shui Ziyi was half drunk again. He wanted to call a few prostitutes down for company, but Xiao Qiye said nothing of this, so he did not dare to call for them rashly. Still grabbing the wine cup, he said to Xiao Qiye even as his wine-induced hiccups persisted, Shui Yanking. That batch of fledglings he is raising in the residence, he specifically put them in a big courtyard, and even habitually hire a teacher to set up some kind of private school. If you ask me, he doesn't seem like he's raising prostitutes. Is that so? Xiao Qiye downed several cups of wine, showing no sign of being drunk. Beside him, Chen Yang filled Shui Ziyi's cup to the brim again. Xiao Qiye casually clinked cups with him and said, then why did he buy those batch of people? There has to be a reason. There's something odd about Shui Ziyi's woe. Shui Ziyi drank several mouthfuls of wine and continued, if not for your lordship's reminder, I would not have noticed. The people he bought are similar in age, but they are all good-looking, with boys and girls both pleasing to the eye. I know there are quite a number of people in the imperial court who are into males. Each of those male prostitutes on Donglong Street is all delicate and supple. They are no less inferior to real women. Is he thinking that the ones sold outside are unclean, and that would easily open himself up to gossip and ridicules, so he had to raise a batch of them on the sly for building connection in the future? Xiao Qiye did not listen to him prattle on. He toasted him and said, then he's going to have to put in a lot of time and effort. Those popular and known male courtesans on Donglong Street only got to where they are today because of patrons spending cold, hard cash on them. He bought both boys and girls. Is the teacher he hired only teaching the boys? That's the odd thing. Shui Ziyi's drunken state was an ungentlemanly sight to behold. He lowered his head for a moment and finally stopped the hiccups before he said to Xiao Qiye, your lordship, he let those girls learn music, wiki, calligraphy, and painting. I know why, which man wouldn't like a pretty lady as a study companion? Yet he let those boys study essays on current affairs. Xiao Qiye's eyes swiftly turned to look at Shui Ziyi. He repeated, he let those boys study essays on current affairs? Just that alone. Shui Ziyi shook his head hard. He extended his finger and said, he set up a small school in that courtyard. Occasionally, he would go there to teach them himself. Your lordship, do you know what he taught? They were all proper classics. Just the previous day, he was teaching these boys, contemporary politics. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Xiao Qiye returned home very late. He saw that the room was still lit, and so he knew Shen Zequan was still waiting for him. Chen Yang dismissed the attendants serving them, leaving only a few of them as guards to stand watch over the courtyard. As usual, Xiao Qiye stepped inside. There was only a glazed lamp lit inside. Shen Zequan was before the small table, looking at the cases. He had already removed his crown and was draped with Xiao Qiye's large robe, looking as he always did before he retired for the night. Xiao Qiye leaned over to press down on Shen Zequan's back and tilted his head to kiss his earlobe. He said, leave a note if something's the matter. It would be the same if we discuss it tomorrow morning upon waking up. Shen Zequan uttered an acknowledgement and turned his head to look at him. Xiao Qiye got up, removed his blade, took out his outer garment and sat cross-legged beside Shen Zequan. Shen Zequan's fingertips pinched the page of the book, but he did not turn it over. He said, some things have to be discussed in person and it can't be clearly explained in just a word or two. Xiao Qiye finally relaxed and undid his clasps. He said, let's take turns. You first or me first? Shenzhen looked at him for a moment, but Xiao Qiye did not pull him closer, so he raised his fingers to help him undo the clasps. After thinking for a moment, he said, "There are many things I have yet to wrap my head around. You go first." Propping up his elbow on the small table, Xiao Qiye flipped out another book from the cabinet at the side and handed it to Shenzhen. As the latter read it, he said, "Of the batch of people Shui Ziaozuo bought, the eldest is 18 years old, and the youngest is 14. Boys and girls, both mixing in one courtyard. The only thing they could be said to have in common is that they are all good-looking. 8 great cities. Zongbo. Chuexi." Shenzhen's fingertip followed the names. He didn't look at their place of origin when he bought them. This might be to obscure the truth so that others would have nowhere to start checking even if they wanted to. Seeing Shenzhen come to a sudden stop at a certain spot, Xiao Qiye moved in closer for a look. "You've seen this name before." Shenzhen looked at that name and said, "Ling Ting. I've heard this name before at Zhangyun Villa. They are all Xiangyun's people." Xiao Qiye said. "She likes smart and sharp children, that's why she used Ling as a surname and changed all the names of these fledglings. You had a drink with Shui Ziaoyi earlier tonight. Did he say anything?" "He said something strange." Xiao Qiye paused for a moment. "He said Shui Ziaozuo bought this batch of people back to the residence, where the girls learn all those stuff the brothels teach, while the boys attended proper school. Shui Ziaozuo hired a teacher for these boys. There's not only essays on current affairs from the Imperial College but also discourse on contemporary politics." Shenzhen pondered it over and said nothing. Xiao Qiye continued, "If he wants students, he could have picked them from decent households. There are plenty of people from the Imperial College who want to formally acknowledge him as their teacher. Yet, he chose the boys he bought back from the brothel as his disciples. Even if these people really accomplish something in their studies, they still can't join the ranks of officials due to their lowly status. So what's in it for him? Unless he intends to raise a bunch of in-residence hangers-on." Shui Ziaozuo, Shenzhen seemed to be drifting away, lost in his thought. He listened to Xiao Qiye's words and swiftly organized his thoughts. If he wants to keep hangers-on, there are better candidates. You and I missed out a point earlier. Shui Ziaozuo and Shi Hongxian are on good terms. It's not like Hua Pavilion can't afford to give him the batch of brothel fledglings he wants, isn't it? Yet, he specifically used money to buy them from Zhangyun Villa. This shows that he had his sights all along on a certain someone among that batch. The images in Shenzhen's mind flashed past. Although he did not have Ding Tao's sharp memory, he kept every single matter and every single word from his past interactions with the others in his mind to mull over. He remembered them all, he would not forget any details. As long as the blood of the Li clan runs in him, he's the imperial heir. Grand Tutor's Qi words were like a thunderbolt that cleaved apart the fog muddling Shenzhen's mind. Once he thought of this phrase, he thought of many more. He abruptly straightened up in his kneeling pose, and his sleeves flipped over and messed up several pages of papers on the small table. The former emperor, Shenzhen grabbed hold of Xiao Qiye's arm. His voice gradually calmed as he said, "The former emperor reigned for a little more than 8 years. His chronic illness went uncured and he had no imperial heirs, the only one who got pregnant was imperial concubine Wei. During the Nanlin hunting grounds incident, the Hua clan rebelled. Hua Saiqian had the guts to make his move that night precisely because of the child in imperial concubine Wei's belly. But after that night, when we returned to the capital, imperial concubine Wei was already thrown into a well to drown. At first, I suspected you, but then later on, I suspected it to be a long-time minister from Lianji's side. They did it to completely sever the noble clan's wishful thinking and let Liege Unhung ascend to the throne smoothly. That's why they struck first to gain the upper hand and killed off imperial concubine Wei. But now that I think about it, there's something wrong with this assumption. Even if imperial concubine Wei was with child, there was still no way to know if it was a boy or a girl, so there was no way they could pit the child against Liege Unhung, who already had the support of Liege. To Lianji, killing imperial concubine Wei is an unnecessary move. Going further back, Emperor Guangcheng was on the throne before Emperor Xiand. The crown prince of the Eastern Palace slit his own throat in the Temple of Penitence because of the rebellion case. At that time, the imperial grandson was still an infant. If he didn't die, he should be 26 years of age this year. However, this case was jointly handled by Ji Lei and Shen Wei. Ji Lei, in order to defect to Pan Rugui back then and show his loyalty, would surely not dare to be too sloppy and careless. So it's even more unlikely for him to leave such a big source of disaster behind. In that case, then the one in this world who can still claim to be an imperial heir could only be. Xiao Qiye grasped back Shen Zequin's icy cold hand and continued in a deep, lowered voice, "The eldest is 18, and the youngest is 14. If it's truly the imperial heir, then the only one who can match the timeline is Emperor Guangcheng. The Eastern Palace was massacred in the era of Emperor Yanji. For nearly a decade after that, no imperial concubine was able to give birth to an imperial heir right under the Empress Dowager's watchful eyes. Although Emperor Guangcheng was suffering from an illness at that time, he wasn't ill to the extent that he was weak and frail. Unable to break free from the Hua clan's hold over him, he could only think of a way outside the palace. Other than me, the only one who knew that Hua Pavilion had been hollowed out beneath to be filled with jars was Xue Zaiozhuo. The collapse case was an attempt to kill Liege Unhung, and this is the part I haven't been able to figure out. Assuming now that he really has an imperial heir in hand, then everything else makes sense. He killed imperial concubine Wei, then tried to kill Liege Unhung. That hidden unease of Shen Zequin was becoming more and more distinct. Xiao Qiye was also daunted by this out-of-the-blue conjecture. He said, if that is truly the case, then the imperial heir is among that batch of people. Both men faced each other. Shen Zequin kept his voice down and said, this imperial heir must not live. Xiao Qiye pinched Shen Zequin's chin and closed the distance between them. His gaze was deep and grave. Lanzhou, we cannot let a single one of these people live. He spoke slowly. His intent to kill was like a raging wave buried in these depths. Both of them thought plenty in this very instant. What was the implication of this imperial heir? It implied that everything in the present will all turn passive. Would the noble clan who had the imperial heir in their grasp be easily defeated? Think about the Empress Dowager, who had ruled behind a screen for as long as 20 years. The Li clan she had in her control could only become her puppet. The power and influence of political factions formed of the aristocratic clans would surely rise again, and Lianji would once again be beaten back into a disadvantageous position. All of a sudden, the sound of knocking rang out from the other side of the door, breaking the heavy atmosphere between the two men. Xiao Qiye said, "Speak." Qiao Tianya said with slight urgency, "Master, the man who has been hurrying all night to catch up with Shidan is back." Shen Zequin stood up at once, gathered his clothes together, and opened the door. Qiao Tianya quickly stepped aside to create a path for him. Shen Zequin looked at Qing, who was kneeling on one knee in the courtyard, and went down the steps. He said, "What's wrong?" "Your Excellency." Qing looked up. His voice was hoarse and shaky. Shidan opened the Shi clan's money vault, but it has already been emptied out. The leaves on the branches in the courtyard rustled in the wind as the trees abruptly inclined their heads to look askance at Qing. Moonlight smeared the ground white, as if paving it with a thick blanket of frost. In the dead silence, Shen Zequin turned his head back a little and said to Xiao Qiye, "Erlang, we've been played for fools by him." His tone was soft and gentle, but it made the entire courtyard of guards all lower their heads. End chapter. 1 Lang, an affectionate way to address a husband like darling.